You would think I'm lying about that. No, I've been asked a number of times about that. And so I thought, well, who am I to hold back? Today would be that day. Now, one of the things you have to understand about this one is the ninth in a series. And about what it needed to do was to try to wrap up all the threads that had been opened up by all of the previous movies. So there was a lot of things that needed to take place in this. Now, I'm not going to give all the spoilers and all that kind of stuff. But I just kind of wanted to highlight what needs to happen here. Think about it. You know the original story, right? The first movies that came out in the 70s all had to deal with Luke Skywalker, right? And his rise, becoming a Jedi Knight, by the end of that third trilogy of movies. And then they started the next three. And if you didn't watch them, go watch them, because they're not that good. But those ones had to deal with his father, who became Darth Vader, but was Anakin Skywalker. So they're kind of out of order. So the middle three would have been the first three if they were to be laid out linearly. And then the final three movies have had to deal with, to some degree, with Luke Skywalker again, but then the idea of passing things on to the next generation. Okay? That's kind of where this has had to go. All sorts of things have to take place. And if you think about it, in a series of 9 movies, they have to do a couple of different things. First, each movie has to accomplish its own goals, right? It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending that means something, right? And then, if it fits within a larger orbit of things, it also needs to accomplish the stuff that gets it from that very first movie to the last movie and wraps up everything in between. Okay? So there's a lot that has to happen. There's a lot of pressure, therefore, on that last movie to kind of tie up everything. Not going to tell you that it did everything perfectly, but it wasn't too bad. Okay? So I'm not going to put any spoilers. If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth seeing. The middle three, if you haven't seen them today, let those go. Now, the interesting thing again about that is what needs to take place. There's always got to be a beginning, a middle, if I try to jam those together, and an ending. And it always has to serve the larger picture. So why talk about that? Think about this gospel reading. We're at the very, near the beginning of Matthew's gospel. But it's one of, many books of the Bible, right? The Bible has an overarching story that it needs to tell. The story of salvation history. Beginning with the first parents and going all the way through to the end of the last book of Revelation and the second coming of Jesus. And along the way, the story needs to continue to be advanced, and each book has to do its part in doing so. But each book, too, needs to tell its own story. It needs to begin somewhere, it needs to go somewhere in the middle, and it needs to conclude in a particular way. All the while, continuing to telling the big picture story of what God has done. That He created everything, human beings fell into sin, but He sent His Son to save us and to prepare us for eternal life. The book of Matthew, the cycle that we're in now, and it's always actually the reading from Matthew is always at Epiphany, but if you begin with it, the very first thing that Matthew does, inspired of course by the Holy Spirit, is tell the story of the lineage of Jesus. It goes through generation after generation after generation, beginning with Abraham, going on down to Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, telling the story that Jesus is this connection. that what had been promised all those many decades and millennia before is coming to fulfillment in Jesus. Goes on then, as we heard at Christmas, the Annunciation of Joseph, the birth of Jesus, and the Holy Feast of the Holy Family would be the next story, which we had already, which was the flight to Egypt. But in between that is this, the story of the Magi. So already we know the birth of Jesus, how the angels had gone out and sought the shepherds to tell them, the descendants of Israel, the good news. But the next ones to hear it were these interesting figures, the Magi. Not Jews. We always kind of fashion them as kings that are coming from a foreign land, Gentiles. This always bugs me every time this thing's out here. It's like navigating around this thing, and I know I'm going to fall someday. But these Magi, these Gentiles that have come following the star because they know the message of what it means. That with the star means the birth of the new king of Israel. And that's the beginning of the story. That Jesus has come not only as fulfillment to all of those generations and what had been promised, then come as fulfillment of the promise of the people of Israel, but now he has come to others, to the Gentiles, so that others may hear the good news too. As the gospel goes through, we hear of all the miracles, all the great things that Jesus does. But as all stories must, it has to conclude. And the gospel, according to Matthew, concludes this way. Chapter 28 is the resurrection. After the crucifixion, Jesus is put in the tomb. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary come to the tomb, and they see that the stone has been rolled back. They encounter the angel, and the angel says, "Why do you look for him here? Don't you know he's been raised?" On their way back, they encounter Jesus. Jesus says, "Go tell my brothers to meet me in Galilee." They run off, tell the 11 disciples. The 11 disciples come to Galilee and encounter Jesus. And he says, "Go to all the nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teach them all that I have commanded you. For I am with you always, until the end of the age." The mission that had the tendrils laid out at the very beginning, the coming of these Magi, these people that represent the Gentile community, and what Jesus was going to do, is now turned into a mission for the disciples. That they're going to go out and to preach and to teach and to baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, to bring new members into the community of believers. That's the mission that's been given. The Epiphany, the revelation, is that Jesus has come. He has come to save. We are now the heirs of that. That just as Jesus met those disciples along the road and gave them that commandment to go out and to teach all the nations, to baptize them, and tell them all that I have commanded you. All of us share in that. These two will be receiving the promise tonight of that baptism, but all of us share in the command to teach them all that I have commanded you. We are now the keepers of that promise. We are now the next book that continues on the gospel. We are the ones to take that message to others who need to hear it, of the saving power of God. We have been entrusted with that responsibility. We are now in the chapter of our own book. How are we going to live that? How are we going to take that message out? How are we going to make it known to others? The end of our book should be the same as what we hope for all, that we encounter the risen Jesus in our own road to Galilee. But along the way, what will we do? The call of Christ is to teach, to baptize, to let all know all that I have commanded you. Make that mission your own. Become disciples of Christ. And go out and meet others on their own road to Galilee. So that when we encounter Christ, He knows who we are,